welcome back to my channel, Now I Know My Rights, a channel dedicated and focused on teaching you the importance of your rights. In today's presentation, we will focus on the top 10 things you should know if cops show up at your party. Knowing your rights is an important life skill. I'm using the word skill here intentionally because no benefit comes from increased knowledge alone. Your attitude also plays an important role. The goal in encounters with law enforcement is not to outsmart them. It's impossible. Officers are trained to gather evidence one way or the other. However, if an individual comes across as rude, agitated, nervous, impolite, and aggressive, the officers will not hesitate to throw the book at him. If an individual comes across as logical, rational, composed, polite, respectful, the very same encounter will evolve with more civility. What I'm saying here is that being polite is not going to keep you out of trouble and save the day. No, what I'm trying to convey is that being polite and being respectful will help you to diffuse the intensity of the situation. What will save the day is knowing your rights and using your rights. Because the moment officers realize that they are dealing with an individual who knows how to use his or her rights, they are going to think twice before overstepping their legal boundaries and abusing their powers. Without any further ado, let's start with today's presentation. Today's presentation is about how to handle your uninvited guests, meaning the officers who show up at your event. Please keep in mind that what's at stake is not an event coming to an end, but a serious possibility that you or your guests can end up with a citation and charges if you don't know how to use your rights. Every city has codes in place regarding acceptable level of noise at different times of day or night. Regardless, it's easy for all of us to get carried away when celebrating a special occasion with family and friends. Before getting into the legalities, I urge you to use your common sense when planning an event. A backyard party at 2 p.m. on Labor Day will be given more latitude by the police than a party blasting with music at 2 a.m. on a weeknight. The following is a step-by-step guide on what to do if officers show up at your doorstep. Police presence is most likely the result of a noise complaint filed by a neighbor. Rule number 1. The first thing to do is to stop the music and ask your guests to quiet down. This way you have handled the music and brought it under control before you talk to the officers. Rule number 2. Open up your eyes. If any illegal activity is going on, anything that you know is illegal, or anything that you think might be illegal, move them from the backyard to the inside of the house. And if it's already in the inside, move it to the back, totally out of the view of the front door. Do this quickly. The longer it takes you to respond to the officer's presence, it raises suspicion. Rule number 3. Are you over the age of 21? If you are not, ask another person over the age of 21
to handle the situation. Rule number 4. Are you sober? If not, it's better to ask a sober person to step outside to handle the situation. Even if you are just a little tipsy and buzzed, you should ask someone else who is completely sober to handle the situation. Just as we have designated drivers when we go out to parties involving drinking, it's a good idea to designate someone beforehand in charge of dealing with the cops if they show up at your event. Rule number 5. Open the door, step outside, and completely close the door behind you. I can't emphasize this point enough. If you don't completely close it, it could be implied as an invitation to enter. Also, under the plain view doctrine, if the officers see anything incriminating that could be observed through the door, they can come in and search the entire premises. As a host, it is you who are responsible for what is happening in your home. So keep that in mind and completely shut the door behind you. Rule number 6. The conversation with the police shall take place outside. Politely ask why they are there. You should use a conversational and respectful tone, not casual or friendly. At all times, be conscious that you are dealing with law enforcement, not your family and friends. Rule number 7. Never lie to the police. If they ask you a question that might get you in legal trouble, such as if there is any underage drinking going on, politely say, "Officer, I choose to remain silent." You are not required to say anything or answer any of their questions. You can't be charged for remaining silent, but you can be charged for lying to the police. If they trick you into giving any affirmative answer that any controlled substance is being used, that might be enough probable cause to obtain a search warrant and come inside. If they don't ask any probing questions and they just say, "The neighbors have complained that your party is too loud," assure them that you will see to it that the problem is taken care of and that you are sorry that the neighbors were disturbed. In most situations, if this is the first visit of the evening by law enforcement, they would leave. However, still depending on the individual officer, the particular neighborhood, and the number of complaints they've received, it might get more serious. Rule number 8. The police might say, "You don't mind if we come in and take a look around." Regardless of what is or is not going inside of your home, there is no way you are going to allow them inside. And the reason is that if you allow them inside and they find illegal substances or evidence of any illegal activity, whether known or unknown to you, there are major legal consequences. The best reply is to say, "With all due respect, officer, I don't consent to having you enter my home." The officers may still persist and say, "Why not?" Or they may say, "It's just a routine check." Again, politely and calmly repeat, "Officer, I don't consent to you entering my home." The Fourth Amendment gives you an absolute right to refuse consent to any search of your home unless officers have a proper search warrant, and if they do, you should look at it and verify it. Or there is an emergency situation, such as someone is screaming for help from the inside, or they hear gunshots, or if there is probable cause that evidence of a crime is being disposed of. Another situation that we've already covered is the plain view rule. That is, the officers actually observe illegal objects. If none of these situations are present and they still want to do the search, they need your consent. And statistics show that most of the time, officers get into premises because hosts let them in. If you invite them inside, they don't need any further authorization. You should keep in mind that if they had enough evidence to come in and search your home, they would not have been asking for your consent. If they are talking to you, it means they are fishing. They are waiting for you to accidentally incriminate yourself or consent to the search. Rule number 9. Don't get tricked into allowing the search. Even after you refuse to give consent, officers might continue a friendly chit-chat about the party. I can't emphasize enough that a friendly chat doesn't mean that the officer is your friend. Officers are trained to use friendliness to elicit information. Don't fall for it. The biggest problem is that majority of people who get into trouble are those who think they are 100% innocent. They consent to searches and they talk to the police because they think they are innocent. But in fact, it's the ignorance of the law that leads the average person to think that he or she is innocent. Rule number 10. Officers force their way in. Now, hopefully once they realize they can't trick you to consent to a search, they would leave. This is a real possibility. They have come across a polite, calm, collected person asserting his or her rights. That would be the end of the stop and the end of their inquiry. However, if despite your refusal to consent to the search, they force their way in, there are solid grounds to challenge any evidence obtained through such a search. If they seize anything, they have to provide you with a list. The bottom line is that there is nothing, absolutely nothing to lose in remaining silent and in refusing to consent to a search, but a lot to gain. May all your parties be peaceful, fun, and joyful.